not only does it leave a gap, but it leaves a liability, and it really disserves, one of the largest minority or disadvantaged groups in the country.
Well, hello, and welcome to the ADA Shop Talk podcast. I'm your host, Paul Klein. And if you are an ADA coordinator, government official, architect, or accessibility specialist trying to better understand the ADA, then you are in the right place. Today's ADA Shop Talk podcast is brought to you by BlueDag. Check out BlueDag's Transition Plan Builder and Inspection Suite over at bluedag.com. We just released version 5.0, and it's got a killer transition plan builder in there for you. So check that out today at bluedag.com. Today I got a guest, someone who's, intertwined in the BlueDag family a little bit, but I got the opportunity to meet him at the ADA Symposium recently. His name's Aaron Hester. He is managing partner with Precision Infrastructure Management. And we're going to have a great conversation about transition plans and some of the hidden gaps. Aaron, how you doing today?
Yeah, doing great. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Yeah, I'm glad you could make the show today. And I was learning more about your firm. I'd heard rumblings through the board here at BlueDag, but about some of the things you guys are doing. And there's always these really interesting firms that are changing the world and in the world of accessibility for the better. And I'm excited to learn more about what you guys do and everything, and some of the hidden gaps in transition plan. I know we have a lot of ADA coordinators and people like that in our audience that are new or trying to manage that monster. And I know you got some experience in that, so we'll be talking about that. But before we do, tell us a little bit about your background, Aaron. How did you get into this whole world of ADA? I always find it fascinating how people got into this world of ADA. Compliance and so forth. So tell us a little bit about your backstory here.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. It's kind of it's almost an accident. I guess out of college, I was working in a marketing capacity and really have a background in database analytics and driving marketing campaigns, and along the way. I guess cross paths with some new technology to remove ADA barriers or certain class ADA barriers. It's kind of a alternate maintenance activity where we're able to remove trip hazards and whatnot, and kind of stumbled upon that technology through family and some colleagues, and did due diligence. I really never realized the need, number one, for removing ADA barriers, hence the ADA. And, after getting into, that type of industry, making a shift to focus on removing barriers with some of these alternative methods. We have a horizontal cutting method that we've utilized over the years. And, that coupled with, had a couple experiences with some pretty decent physical injuries, back injuries, which were almost incapacitated me. And, I never really realized, how serious the slightest ADA barrier could be for those with disabilities, how big the industry was, and, really how passionate the body of, ADA coordinators or those involved with disabilities rights really are. And it was really by accident, but, over the years, it's really turned into a passion and, something I devote a large part of my time to.
Yeah, that's great. No, that makes sense. That's what's gratifying about this work is it really is important, and it allows people to, live independently, and we take that for granted. My light bulb moment is when I broke my leg, and it really connected the dots. Oh, that's why that curb ramp's there. I really need that right now. And that was just a little temporary thing that's a blip on the map for some folks. So super, super important, and great work you guys are doing. Now, you guys are a nationwide firm or primarily East Coast, West Coast? How big are you? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so PIM, Precision Infrastructure Management, we're a nationwide firm, US. We cover that footprint. We do have some intellectual property that allows us to, go outside of that with certain scoped type of projects. But a lot of our work, really, grew out of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast states and has expanded from there. To really focus on some of the largest and highest profile municipal entities or counties in the country.
Yeah. So primarily municipal counties, cities dealing with their transition plans, self-evaluations. And I think the title of this episode is something along the lines, we're still working through it, so by the time you see this, it'll already be out there, but the hidden gaps in transition plans. So I know we talked to Kaylin Dunlap about hidden gaps in the ADA, specifically what she's experienced, and unfortunately an injury resulting from the lack of bed height in transient lodging. In the gaps that you're talking about are what you've, correct me if I'm wrong, with your client base, with cities and counties, some of the hidden gaps in their transition plans. Tell us more what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, over the years, being involved in developing ADA transition plans that comply with DOJ requirements, really to help municipalities bring their infrastructure, up to ADA compliance. And then most recently with PROAG and WCAG standards being solidified. Really, every municipal entity has different staff levels, different staff that is focused or really tasked with handling ADA related items. Of that being an ADA transition plan, one of the things we've noticed is that the process is very fragmented in many, many entities, and therefore various components get a lot of focus. Some components of an ADA transition plan get very little focus or are left out. And not only does it leave a gap, but it leaves a liability, and it really disserves, one of the largest minority or disadvantaged groups in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And, so some of these gaps, I'm happy to go through, some of these areas that we routinely see if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think our listeners would appreciate that. And I certainly will, because I'm always interested in what people are seeing out there and how we can all get better in this industry.
Yeah, sure. Some of the most recent projects we've had the opportunity to work on, we're surprised. There is no written formal plan. You've got 1,000 employees. There is no written formal plan, and that's very surprising, especially today. With not only the type of country we have, resources and tools we have. Access to information and knowledge and management talent, there's no plan in place. And that plan really is critical to helping, bring not only the right of way, but facilities, parks, programs, policies, services, communications, up so provides adequate and equal access to those with disabilities. So we find a lot of entities, no written plan whatsoever. And then second, they're not even aware that they need a plan. If you have over 50 employees, it's required a written plan.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, under 50 employees for a municipal entity, you do have to perform self-assessments, but the plan doesn't have to be a formalized written plan. So that's number one, no written plan. Or lo and behold, some plans are 20 years old. They've been on a shelf, and no one has looked at them or updated them or championed those those efforts that were initially identified in the plan. So that's number one on the list, I think.
And real quick before we go to number two, what do you think the root cause of that? I find the same thing in a lot of agencies, and I have my thoughts, but I'm curious, what do you think, what do you find with your clients that you work that have that scenario is the root cause?
Well, there's probably a couple reasons. I think one of the reasons could be, and I don't mean this in a pointed way, it's really a lack of leadership. Leaders really have the opportunity to influence these policy decisions. Could be council related, it could be management related, but really leading an effort to make sure that these requirements are followed through on, they're implemented, and resources are allocated right. So sometimes there's a lack of empowerment or leadership structure there to really facilitate that in a proactive way. So that's one. And again, I kind of mean that in a warm way.
Yeah.
Leadership, there could be a leadership gap for various reasons, not just because people are just totally dysfunctional. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's one. I think the other reason is the process. It's kind of complex. You've got multiple, functional units in a municipal entity with a lot of times different policies, goals, and objectives of serving, their functional unit. Like facilities and what goes on in those facilities is very different than what goes on in Parks and Rec.
Hmm.
Parks and Rec, they're dealing with, people accessing these parks, on a day-to-day basis, which is sometimes very different than what goes on in a facility.
Right.
And also the right of way or programs, policies, and services. All these functional units, they're kind of heads down, focused on their vertical tasks, so to speak. And it takes a champion to really pull them together, have the authority, the funding, and the support from higher up the food chain, city management and policymakers to really facilitate and produce a plan and integrate it across multiple functional units. So that's probably the biggest reason. It's a fragmented situation there.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's so true, and I think I've seen some of my experience has been in agencies that have the most success in proper implementation and doing it the right way. The ADA coordinator is either in the city manager or the CAO's office and reports directly to them, and then has a direct avenue to department heads to get things done, or they're in risk management because risk management has a heavy hammer. I don't want to say hammer, but the risk management department generally can be a little more I don't want to say forceful,
Assertive.
but assertive. Exactly. So those are the two kind of scenarios I see that help. And politicians come and go, the ADA regulations come and go, but an agency's transition plan is a living transition plan, and I think that's so important. So that's the first gap that you mentioned was a lack of a plan and or it has dust on it from 20 years ago. What's number two on your hidden gaps for transition plans?
Yeah, so once you get into the process, you identify the steps, you've got a semblance of, a team that's supporting the effort and working on it. One of the things that's important is really to develop an engagement strategy. These plans, you'll see an online survey that's posted, and that's not community engagement. That is just checking a box. And really engagement. You got to engage staff. You got to engage the community. Sometimes people really don't know how to engage. They don't know
Mm-hmm.
where to engage. They don't know who's responsible. So you got to spend some time and effort to really reach out to not only stakeholder groups in the community, but uh, those groups that may travel transit, those that may be lower income, those that may be, um, you know, not really engaged in a proactive way. You need to give them avenues to really respond. They're not all online. They're not going to go on the website and find it online. They're not going to sign up for a listserv to get notifications. They're not all going to be on Facebook. They ride transit. They're in these stakeholder groups. They
Right.
ride bus systems, train systems, so all income levels, race is important. Those in citywide, I think is real good to employ as well. To make sure different parts of the city. How a business owner downtown in a business district might view things different than a neighborhood. So all those things really need to be taken into consideration. Income, race, disability, even those without vehicles, and all age groups too. So it's more than just an online survey.
Right. No, I like that. That's so powerful because I think a lot of those members or sub members of the communities can be your biggest advocates too in this. And sometimes you hear from the politicians or the decision makers like, well, we don't want to, for lack of a better, we don't want to open up our books and expose our weaknesses because then they're going to use that against us. But and I'm wondering if you found the same thing where you have embraced agencies that have embraced engagement and involved those communities and been transparent generally have more success because the people you've involved in that generally become your biggest advocates because they know it was sincere and transparent and really trying to do the right thing as opposed to just hide it, on some third page of the website for a survey that two people fill out and nobody ever really sees. I mean, you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I would agree with you, Paul. It is tough. Sometimes, projects don't receive proper engagement just because it is a big task to not only facilitate all those avenues to facilitate feedback, but you do get some exposure there of things that, really haven't been addressed. And sometimes they're pretty uncomfortable and people can get vocal. Some projects that we work on, you do have advocates that, sometimes it might seem like they're a thorn in the side, but, really what they're trying to say is we have some important things that need to be heard. And, I feel like, if people have the opportunity to be heard and involved in the process, then they really can rally behind it, even if there is a deficiency in an area. They can really rally behind it. You gave someone a fair opportunity to not only maybe it's a debate about something, about how something gets handled, but you give them an opportunity to give input. It may not be the final result or exactly prioritized in a certain way, but giving them the opportunity it usually does result in the best outcome.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I advocate for, and it's been my experience, and I love that number 2 there. So that's super important. And I don't know how many of these do you have? Just total number of gaps. We have 2 so far.
Yeah, we've got let's see, probably like 3 more.
Okay,
yeah.
So it's probably 5. Your 5 top gaps. So we've got number 1. Lack of a plan. Number 2, no engagement with constituents and communities in the process. So what's our number 3?
Yeah, I've got actually 7 to be specific, but it's okay. We can hit a couple of these from a high level, and they're pretty well understood, I think. I would say probably the next is after lack of engagement is haphazard standards utilization. Like, no one really understands the standard they need and how that standard needs to get applied and addressed. It's different from right away and facilities. Right away, you need to use PROAC.
Yeah.
Facilities, you need to use ADEC. Well, what are the differences? Which ones apply where? That's important. You got like things like EV charging stations and rulemaking. Well, there's no standard, but there's rulemaking on it.
Right.
And there is some development. At least take the time to install your EV stations right. Those types of things, get ahead of the curve. So standards utilization sometimes needs some work.
That's excellent. I agree. That's a good one. Hey, so, okay. So we got lack of a plan. What was number 2? Lack of engagement.
Engagement, haphazard standards utilization. Then that flows right into incomplete assessments. If the standards being utilized aren't really formalized and scopes aren't known and defined, you've got really incomplete assessments. So what you've done is you've only addressed a certain class of barriers. And what you've done is you kind of increase your liability, by really doing a subpar assessment.
Right.
You had the opportunity to do it. You should have known what the standard was, and you should have assessed for that.
Right.
It's not a mystery. And you either choose to or you don't out of ignorance, but both aren't good because you're really doing a disservice to those with disabilities or creating, a disabled situation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So moving through these a little bit, Paul, I think the last couple here, That incomplete assessment, it really makes plans, how you organize this data. If you've got haphazard standards, there's gaps in the assessment, then you really have a plan that's not fully actionable as well. You've got to
Hmm.
organize that data in a way to where it's actionable. And those three kind of flow together.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. I love it.
So one of the biggest things when you find all of these barriers, then the question is, well, now what? You've got to put together an implementation plan and keep up with the plan. And well, a lot of times that's a big dollar figure. It's
Hmm.
hard for everyone to digest. So you got to work on, well, what's a priority and why? Well, the other thing that sometimes gets left out, there are a number of alternative maintenance activities, which I mentioned at the top of the call. You've got very valuable alternative maintenance activities like if you have trip hazards, one we utilize and recommend is the horizontal cutting because you can maintain ADA compliance. You can save 50 to 70% off of replacement or redesign, sometimes even more.
Yeah.
Another one that is out there is, if you've ever seen ponding water in pedestrian access route, there are ways to mitigate that without replacing, complete infrastructure, like on a curb ramp retrofit program. You can utilize these, and there's others out there. Some we don't recommend because you really can't get the ADA compliance with them.
Right.
So utilizing those in simplest form saves money. Like a $100 million plan, it might save $20 million,
Yeah.
and over 10 years, it's really more than $20 million.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's what a lot of agencies sometimes missed opportunities are. Public Works is already fixing a curb ramp or a branch root lift on some panels, and it's not either being identified as an ADA upgrade or trigger. They're just going out and replacing the concrete for a trip hazard or whatever, but they can actually take credit for that in their as part of their transition and mitigation plan, showing a good faith effort, and just by simply having a mechanism in place to track that and take credit, so that 10 years from now, oh yeah, we did 4 miles of curb ramps or panels, and we mitigated 123 barriers, over 5 years. And so I think that's super important. Just yeah, taking advantage of those that low hanging fruit, if you will. For a lot of things, a lot of these agencies are already doing, but just identifying them, as ADA mitigation and so forth, or doing it in parallel.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul.
So good stuff. All right. Well, so is that all of them? Let's see.
Well, the last I would recommend, if I had a plug in for probably the last gap, is really making the document a living document, a living transition plan.
Yes.
Updating it on a regular schedule. Staff changes, policy changes, budget change, update the plan. I think the goal is to make progress, continue making progress on the plan. It's a plan that, you're not going to get it done in 1 year. You're going to get it done over a period of time, make progress, get ahead of the curve. And the net is you're really helping people's livelihoods. You're giving them more accessibility to things that make their life better,
Yeah.
and you're avoiding injuries. And that's the goal.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. It's a continuous process. There's a saying: success isn't a destination. It's an ongoing thing. It's something you're always striving for, and you don't someday just go, okay, we're compliant. No, the next
Right.
week you have an Easter egg hunt, a temporary, parade or something. I mean, that's all part of this process and ongoing. I mean, yeah, maybe your facilities are all fixed and corrected, but you still want to have that living transition plan and processes in place and engagement and all these things that we've talked about. So I think that's super helpful. I want to try to recap. You said there were 7, right?
Yep. I think we got 7
What
covered
did, what
here.
did you have 5? What was 5 again? And then we'll
Oh,
recap
let's
all of them.
see. Let me get back through the list here. So, no written plan, community engagement, standards utilization, incomplete assessment, the implementation is not actionable, and no maintenance activity, alternative maintenance activity utilization. And I believe it's not really a living document. It doesn't get updated regularly and worked on.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
think that's 7.
Yeah, that's good. Those are good. Well, we'll put those in the show notes, and for everybody in case you were listening and so forth. We'll also have Aaron's email and website in case you want to reach out to him and pick his brain a little more. But before we close out here, I wanted to ask you 2 quick things. One general question and then one follow up. What if you had to tell a advice for an ADA, a new ADA coordinator or one that's been there for a little while that's struggling with implementing their ADA transition plan? What advice would you have for that ADA coordinator?
Well, I think one of the good places to start is, really with staff, find out what has been done. Is there a plan? What departments, what have they developed departmentally? What is your park and rec? What has public works done for right of way? What has engineering done for right of way? Gather some of that information and get kind of a baseline. And then once you have that baseline, I think reaching out to, really trusted industry consultants and advisors, firms that focus on nothing but this. Those firms focus on these things for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They have a passion for them. They have the culture and the tooling and the expertise designed to help. And that can cut the learning curve down and get their input on the process, where you are on the baseline and what things you may need to work on, and go from there. And I think if you do that, you're probably able to foster support internally and champion initiatives like these. And, industry events like, the ADA symposium that just took place in Minneapolis, a lot of colleagues attend that. It's a very passionate and engaged group, probably more than a lot of industries out there. And, those 3 things should end up with some actionable results and, move things along.
That's excellent. Well, that's awesome, Aaron. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and those tips. And we'll put those in the show notes. And I've got your website as precisioninfrastructuremanagement.com. I've got your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. And is it okay to share your email or the general email in case people want to reach out to you?
Yeah, my email's just fine to share. And happy to help in any way can.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I'll include that in the show notes if you want to reach out to Aaron and Precision Infrastructure Management, or PIM, as we like to say. And I really appreciate you sharing those tips, your experience, your knowledge. I think getting a wide swath of people involved in the ADA is important on this show, and those are great tips. And I couldn't agree with them more, Aaron. So I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right, folks, that's it for today. Another great interview, another great resource for you here on the ADA Shop Talk podcast. Get out there and rock your world. Keep the ADA moving forward. And until next week, have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.